Richard, about a month ago, we found beads clogging up all the faucets and toilets.
So what'd you do?
Well, Richard, I'm a vascular surgeon, and I unclog and reconnect human plumbing. So how hard is it to do house plumbing?
So we're like brothers?
Well, kind of.
Well, what happened is that these beads got out of your water softener. Let me just explain about hard water. In this area, when rainwater comes from the sky, comes down through the ground, it goes through the aquifer. And this aquifer is limestone. When that water goes through the limestone, it picks up calcium. Now, the water comes in through this water softener, and it goes down into this first tank, and the first tank is filled with these beads, and these beads have a negative charge. Now that means the calcium is attracted to those beads of resin and stays right in this first canister. Now the water continues down through, comes back up here, goes into the house as soft water. So once a day, you're going to regenerate the unit using a brine solution here. The brine comes into this tank, flushes away that calcium to a drain, and it also makes those ion resins attracted again to calcium. So what I think happened in your case is this. Here's the unit, and down at the very bottom, there's a basket. Now that basket is cracked. See that?
So that's how the beads got in the house.
Exactly.
So what should we do?
We should call a specialist, somebody that does this all the time and gets you back with soft water.
Sounds great.
Rick Johnson is the water quality expert around these parts. So do you see a lot of this, Rick?
Unfortunately, we do, Richard. The amount of chlorine in the water, it just tears up the plastic parts in it.
All right, let me get this control head right out of our way.
Okay, we're going to pull this tank out of here. Empty it out.
All right, into this tank?
Into this tank.
Just grab that, Grace. Okay, let's go, Rick. Here we go.
Yep.
Here it comes, all the resin's dumping out. Keep coming. Tip it up a little more.
Wow, there's a lot.
All right, so now we want to flush it out?
Yep, we're going to clean it out with the hose.
All right, that should do it?
That should do it. We're going to dump this in the barrel and get rid of it.
All right, good. All right, here we go. All right, careful. All right, so is that clean enough?
That's clean enough. It's time to rebuild the tank.
All right, so here's our new manifold tube, they call it, with a basket at the bottom, so no resin gets up inside there. All right, what about the control head, Rick?
Richard, that's 9-10 years old. It's got a lot of plastic parts. We need to replace it.
All right, so gonna go new control head, all right. That sits right down on top here. All right, so now city water comes in right here, and it drops out through this diffuser basket right there.
Right, and then it rains down through the resin.
All right, so all those beads of resin sit right up in here. This is what they look like new, Grace. Look at that.
Wow, what a difference.
And you really want to make sure you get these changed pretty regularly so that they don't lose their effectiveness.
Okay.
So the water's coming through all those beads of resin.
Correct, Richard, and it goes down and goes through this gravel bed.
All right, so at the very bottom we have gravel. What's that do?
Well, it helps hold the manifold, plus it works as a filter.
So ready to rebuild?
We're ready to rebuild, Richard. We'll put the manifold in the tank.
I'll do that.
I'll grab the tape.
All right, so you want to seal this so no gravel or beads of resin go inside
Correct.
this. That's a good idea. And I'll hold it right there. All right, with that sealed, now we can put our gravel and beads in?
Correct.
All right, so I'll hold it down at the bottom. Grace, why don't you grab that gravel for us, all right?
All right.
And just, okay, dump that right in.
That is.
How much? All of it?
No, about half of this,
You
Richard.
control it then, right?
Okay, that's good. Now we're ready for our resin beads.
All right, good. Here we go. Ooh. Is this good for you? Did you fill it all the way up?
No, about 15 inches from the top, Richard.
Okay.
Grace, why don't you pull that tape off? We won't need that anymore.
Okay.
Good. I will put the new control head in, drop it over the manifold tube, and then thread it in place. Just hold that tank for me. All right, so our control head is mounted on the tank, and that has its own new valve right here. So what we've done is we've modified all the plastic piping with elbows and new pieces of pipe. We've got the cold water into the tank right here, and this is the water that leaves the tank as softened water goes into the house. With that, the bead tank, or the resin tank, is pretty well done. On this side, we also have another tank, and that's filled with blocks of sodium or salt. That makes a brine solution. Now, the brine solution is important during the regeneration process when we bring the brine over into this tank so that we can flush the calcium off of those beads of resin. Why don't you make that connection, Rick? So the brine comes in at this point. We flush the beads of their calcium, and now it wants to go to the discharge, which is this pipe right here. Why don't you make that connection too for me? All right, through that discharge will be all the byproducts of the water softener. The calcium that was attached to the beads, we don't want that to go into the house. We want to discharge it to the drain. All right, guys, with all our connections made, it's time to turn it on. There it is, good. Now, what does Grace have to do to make sure this thing runs right for the long haul?
Just basically keep salt in it, either block or pellet.
All right, I can see the big block down there, but you can also use pellets, and that creates a brine solution. Now there's also a timer over here that sends that brine solution over to flush out the beads. How often do you want to set that to work?
Well, it depends on where you live. In this area, about every 3 days.
Okay, so I can hear it right there. Yeah, discharging.
And how often should I have a maintenance person here to service this?
Once a year.